guys, it's Sam, and this is my spoiler-free review for Eleanor Park by Rainbow Rowell. For those of you that don't know, this is a YA contemporary romance story about two teenagers growing up in the 80s who fall in love. Firstly, and most importantly, I do want to say that there is a couple trigger warnings for this book. This book does deal with the topics of bullying, weight, and domestic violence. So first let me say, as far as like world building for this story, since it did take place in the 80s, I really enjoyed that. I'm not a huge 80s person. There are some people that are really big fans of the 80s. I am not one of those people, but I did enjoy the references that we got in here. There's references to different pop culture things, comic books, TV shows, all that kind of thing. So if you do enjoy the 80s, you will like those tidbits, but if you don't have a lot of those references and you don't quite get it, you didn't grow up during that time period, you aren't a huge fan of the music, movies, etc., you still don't need to in order to enjoy it. As I said, I'm not a huge fan of that, and I still enjoyed the story overall. The biggest thing about this story is obviously the characters, and I really enjoyed that this was a very realistic story in all kinds of ways. As far as how the characters did end up meeting and falling in love, that kind of thing, it was very realistic. It's something you could see happening. Everything flowed very realistically. I also really enjoyed the way this was written. It is dual perspective, but it's not by chapter. Each chapter will have multiple different viewpoints in there between the two characters. And I really liked that because you didn't feel like you were waiting around for the other perspective at all. It was very kind of back and forth, but not too quickly. Everything that was put in here was very essential, and this story did take place over numerous months, but you didn't feel like you were bogged down or any part of it was slow because you only had those essential tidbits, but you still felt that time was passing, if that makes sense. As I mentioned before, these two characters are very realistic, and because of that you get a lot of teenage self-esteem issues and body issues especially, but it was really cute because you got to see the characters through the other one's eyes. So the one character will have some kind of self-esteem thing, be worried about their body, how they look, etc., but then you'll see the other character and how much they like how that person looks. Even though neither character is your typical YA kind of perfect, you know, hottie in any way, they both really appreciate the other one for who they are, which I really like and I thought was really realistic. And it was a really nice relationship for, I think, teenagers to see. There are also really interesting family dynamics in this story. Neither character comes from the perfect family or anything. Park is from an interracial family, and so you have these different interracial issues and things that pop up with that, which I found really interesting. Also, Eleanor's family has another whole set of issues. For me, that made it a little harder, I think, for me to attach to the story because it had issues that come up in my career as a social worker, so it's very hard to identify with a characterization of that and with a situation that you see a lot of. So for me, books are an escape, so it was very hard to kind of see that within my literature. So that's just something that's a personal opinion and something that affected my opinion, but might not necessarily affect another person's opinion of it. Since these characters were so realistic, I didn't find them either likable or unlikable. Honestly, I felt very neutral on the characters. That seems to be a very unpopular opinion, but I didn't attach to either one of them. I found them, again, realistic, but I didn't gravitate to either one of them, and I actually found them very hard to attach to as very neutral. Eleanor especially is a character that is hard to attach to, I feel. I think that she was written that way. I think that's how you're supposed to feel about her, so I don't necessarily dock the book for that, but she is very hard to get to kind of know, and that is kind of her whole persona throughout the book, and kind of the point of a lot of things is that she's a very cold and closed-off character. Because of all of those elements kind of playing in on one another, I actually didn't really feel that much for the romance in this story. I know some of you are going to be like, but I just didn't enjoy it, really. I didn't really buy it. It is realistic, so I feel bad saying I didn't buy it, but for some reason I just didn't get the butterflies. I felt it was realistic, but I just couldn't connect to it. I didn't really care. I felt that, in a way, since you were in each character's head, they both had a lot of crushy type feelings and such. But there was a few things that just rubbed me the wrong way, and I felt like for the character situation, this like over obsessiveness about each other was a little just off-putting to me. So the overabundance of kind of cutesy romantic feelings started to get a little grating to me after a while. There's actually a line in here, this isn't a spoiler or anything, but there's a line in here that was saying something along the lines of, I noticed that their eyelashes match the color of their freckles. Which is a cute kind of line, But I've never noticed that about a human. I've never been like, your freckles match. I don't know. It was just a little too over the top for me. Maybe I have a cold heart. That is totally possible, and I'm willing to admit that. The ending was also a very vague ending, so if you aren't into vague endings, I don't think you should necessarily pick this up, but I enjoyed the vague ending. I thought it was realistic for the story. Again, this is a realistic story, so I thought that the vague ending made sense, and I actually kind of enjoyed it. So overall, I gave Eleanor Park 3 to 3.5 stars. I enjoyed it, but I wasn't blown away by it. Again, this could have been another example of overhyping. This book is one of Rainbow Rowell's most hyped books, along with Fangirl. This is the first thing I've ever read by Rainbow Rowell, and I ultimately couldn't give it a higher rating, although I did enjoy how realistic it was. I did enjoy a lot of the dynamics, and I enjoyed how the characters were realistic. Ultimately, I couldn't attach to them, and I didn't enjoy the romance. And since this is a romantic-driven book, this is a YA contemporary, you're meant to fall in love with the characters, and you're meant to love the romance, I couldn't give it a higher rating because I didn't. But I know a lot of people do enjoy this book, and I know a lot of people do enjoy the romance, and that they do enjoy the characters and everything else. So, it kind of varies person to person. I think this is a book that you can either love or just kind of feel about, like I did. So, comment down below and let me know what you thought of Eleanor Park, and if you loved it, or if you felt kind of wishy-washy about it like I did. I'm sure I'll get a ton of comments saying, how dare you not love Eleanor Park? And I'm sorry, I just didn't love it as much as everybody else did. I do really enjoy Rainbow Rowell's writing, and I will be reading more books by her. For example, I do have Fangirl, so I plan on picking that up, and hopefully I will enjoy a little more and connect to the characters a little bit more. So thank you all for watching, and I'll see all of you guys soon. Bye!